Say hello to Kirby, a staple on Nintendo consoles. He's a quirky little guy, and he debuted with a particularly tiny game. He was also more basic than we now know him to be. While Kirby is known as a Nintendo character, he was created by HAL Laboratories. So what is Kirby? Honestly, who knows? We know he's pink now, but this is a colorless game, and he appears white on the cartridge box. He's round, squishy, happy. Everything about this Game Boy title screen exudes happiness. With the title of Kirby's Dream Land, you automatically expect sweet dreams from this one screen. You hear cheerful, upbeat music, and you see lots of Kirbys dancing and rolling around, and stars shooting across the screen and sparkling around the logo. Here's a fun fact, the Japanese name for this game translates to Kirby of the Stars. If the title screen didn't make that name clear, there are many interactions with stars within the game. Kirby's journey begins in green greens. I like knowing what color this stage would be. I also like this music despite its high-pitched melody. It feels appropriate for Kirby, and the high notes blend in well with the rest of the music. Jun Ishikawa made an excellent soundtrack. Now, more about Kirby. He can move left and right and even jump. But wait, there's more. He can inhale, and it's the most powerful inhale I've ever seen. He opens his mouth wide and vacuums up almost any enemy in his path. Then he can spit them back out at other enemies after turning his food into a star. There's a small price to pay, which is that he can't move while inhaling. Very early on in the first stage is a wall too high to jump over. Now it's time to use another inhale ability activated by pressing up on the control pad. With a mouthful of air, you can now essentially fly, and you can also spit out that air to defeat certain enemies. It's nice to know that all it takes to fly is a body full of air and appendages barely qualifying as arms. I think it can be best summed up by the Kirby movie. Sorry in advance. According to all known laws of aviation, there is no way that a Kirby should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The Kirby, of course, flies anyways, because Kirbys don't care what humans think is impossible. Moving swiftly on, the first stage continues to be very simple, with plenty of goofy enemies and introducing other mechanics. Sometimes you'll find warp stars for Kirby to grab onto and ride to the next part of the level. You'll encounter a mini-boss, Poppy Bros Sr., who throws bombs at you and must be defeated to move on. There are also a couple doors leading to inside the trees. The first one leads to a pair of bottles, evidently containing healing liquids, and towards the end, you'll have to climb to the top of a tree from the inside. I like this little climb. The enemy placement is carefully thought out, and you have to find ways around enemies without spitting another enemy at them. Exiting at the top of the tree, you're greeted with boss music. You may have made friends with one tree and made Bob Ross proud, but there's another tree who blocks your way forward. Wispy Woods puffs out harmful gusts of air just like Kirby, only your air isn't harmful to the tree. So you'll need to find something else to convert into a star projectile, like those apples he drops from above. He does seem rather sad to be defeated though. I'm not entirely sure what vibe was intended here in such a happy game. The game takes an interesting turn with Stage 2, Castle Lololo. While still linear, the stage feels much more open due to a large number of doors and other diversions. I like that, it feels like I'm actually touring through a castle. This exploration features many new ghostly enemies and introduces exciting new items to improve Kirby's attack ability. First, on your natural path is a microphone, which allows Kirby to clear the screen's enemies with a powerful screech. And later, hidden in a room just after the stage's mini-boss, you may encounter spicy food. It's hard to say whether Kirby is a fan of spicy food or not, but I'm a fan of when he eats it. It's firepower. You can breathe non-stop fireballs for a limited amount of time. Stage 2 ends with a boss, and all other stages will too. Here are the rulers of the castle, Lololo and Lalala. You already met Lololo as a mini-boss, but now you must fight both at the same time. They're smaller than Kirby, although possibly not as cute, which must be why they have beef with each other. It's a simple fight as they push boxes across the screen, not attacking you in any way. The objective is to inhale the boxes and spit them back out at the bosses, and the challenge is timing this without taking damage. It certainly works as an early game boss, and as a reference to one of HAL's earlier, lesser-known series, Adventures of Lolo. Onwards to Float Islands, a beach level. The tropical setting is top-notch artwork for the Game Boy, and it makes this world feel colorful. Somehow this game is really good at adding colors without actually adding colors. In Float Islands, you can float over the islands, go spelunking, and maybe test the waters. Water levels are feared in video games, especially early in gaming history with difficult, clunky controls. Thankfully, it's not a requirement in this level, although the water physics aren't much different to Kirby's floating physics, if at all. The end of this level is very exciting. After a wild ride up to the clouds, Kirby encounters a Japanese sweet potato or an English mint leaf. Yes, for whatever reason, the English translations of this game turned a potato into a leaf, but the effects are the same in both versions of the game. Consumption leads to a floaty state and the ability to shoot endless air bullets. And in this case, the screen starts scrolling itself, locking at a quick pace. That's when Kabula appears, a crazy blimp with cannons. My goodness, this game is getting violent. In the end, this boss is a simple concept and can be beaten by holding the attack button and following Kabula's elevation levels. Still, the introduction to the fight is a lot of fun. We ended the last stage in the clouds and will stay there for stage 4. Bubbly Clouds is another friendly name, but it's scarier than it sounds. It gets scary quickly when you try to inhale an enemy that says no, causing them to chase you instead before exploding. Even the boss is a cloud named Krako. The mini-boss is just a weird eyeball with other floating circles, but this is Krako Jr. who grows into Krako at the end. I'm really impressed with how weird this game can get while staying cute. Those bubbly clouds look fun to play in, and the happy bubbly music helps a lot. Interestingly though, this happy atmosphere is actually very near the end of the game. The whole game is only 5 stages long, and let's be real, it's actually just 4. Moreover, it's easy to get here. The first time I died in this game was in Bubbly Clouds, and then it barely took me half an hour to beat the whole thing. Something's not right there. Game Boy games are often short, but the system was also meant for games that occupied larger chunks of time. Sadly, Kirby's Dream Land fails at that aspect. It's a pocket-sized game on a pocket-sized system. The intro cutscene into Stage 5 once again shows lots of charm, with Kirby charging down from the clouds to the mountain peak. Welcome to Mount Dedede, where self-proclaimed King Dedede has built his castle. In this stage, Kirby must fight all 4 previous bosses, which by this point was already an overused video game trope. Perhaps it was necessary for filler in this game though. There's a mini portion of each previous stage leading up to their respective bosses, featuring a weird interaction with a Kirby clone. From what I can tell, the fights are unchanged other than Kabula's significant health increase. Finally, once the bosses are defeated again, it's time to face the king. Nobody really knows what a Dedede is either, but I could say the same about any regular enemy in the game. The showdown takes place in a fighting ring. It's not obvious how to fight him, mostly because of his random attack patterns. When he attacks with a hammer or by jumping, it generates a star for Kirby to inhale and then use as a projectile. It's a decent challenge to damage Dedede while avoiding damage yourself, and I like the boss design. It just doesn't feel like the end of the game. Well, in a way, it isn't. You get an ending sequence after Dedede and some credits, but then the game tells you how to access Extra Mode, which is perhaps the most worthwhile second loop in any retro game. While it takes you through the same levels, almost all enemies have been replaced, and it adds a sense of difficulty that wasn't present in the game before. Most second loops of games feel lazy. This one feels properly developed, and I can only assume they ran out of time to make new levels with this difficulty. Nonetheless, if you're going to play this game, I recommend playing Extra Mode for a more complete experience. The new enemies have different attacks, and often deal more damage to Kirby. I died much more in Extra Mode and even saw the game over screen. In particular, the bosses have been upgraded, and even Wispy Woods is somewhat of a roadblock. As well as dropping apples, he now drops the spiky enemies Gordo, taking away half of Kirby's health in one hit, and also immune to inhaling. A challenge of this scale was unexpected after breezing through normal mode. When you consider that bosses are the most difficult part, that also makes Extra Mode Mount Dedede extra tricky to clear. Game overs reset the stage, so you can't take too many deaths, and that's hard to avoid. In fact, I even spent 15 minutes on Dedede alone this time. His increased speed and evolved attacks are hard to battle against. Kirby isn't the fastest, and I got frustrated at his controls here. Sometimes they feel sticky when you try to inhale something. It takes a little too long to get moving again afterwards. Clearing Extra Mode leads to a slightly different ending, and it also gives all the enemies a curtain call after the credits. Now, are you ready for a third mode? You can now play Config Mode. Okay, all this does is allow you to set the number of lives at the start of the game and set your health. Not any higher than Kirby's usual health though. You could, however, give yourself a grand challenge by lowering his maximum health to 1. I thoroughly enjoyed this game, but then it ended. This feels like it's a preview, a really good preview. One of the things that defines Kirby as a character wasn't present in his first game either, his copy abilities. So, it's basic as well as short, and I feel let down by the size even on the Game Boy. But what we have is really good. Therefore, my final score for Kirby's Dream Land will be 7.1 out of 10. This was actually my first time playing through a Kirby game, and I'm excited to see more. If you've never played a Kirby game either, I can absolutely recommend trying out this little preview to the series. There are a couple options to play it now. For the 20th anniversary of Kirby's Dream Land, HAL made Kirby's Dream Collection on the Wii, featuring 6 Kirby games and brand new challenge levels. The 3DS Virtual Console is no longer available, but thankfully now we have the Nintendo Switch Online, which is perhaps the easiest way to play this game now. This time, I couldn't find much in the way of reviews from its release. I'm sure there was a review in Japan's Famitsu magazine back then. They rarely missed a game, but I couldn't even find a documented score, let alone an archive of the issue. On top of that, Electronic Gaming Monthly barely even mentioned Kirby's Dream Land. For 2 issues, it was listed as a new release, and that was all. It may be a tiny game, but that doesn't make it insignificant. No one treated it better than Nintendo Power, making sure it was significant by printing an 8-page preview. You could probably beat normal mode faster than reading all those pages. Their score added up to 14.3 out of 20, a respectable sum for a Game Boy title. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy, initially released in 1992? Leave a like if you're as cute as Kirby, and then inhale the subscribe button. Wait, no, I need that. Give it back? Oh good, you clicked on it instead. As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self. The whale said, "Get out of my blowhole."